Hello and welcome to Soul GPS. I'm Eva, and in today's video what I wanted to do is to give you a very useful tool to bring down the conflict inside of your mind that can lead to emotional dysregulation. This conflict pretty much all of us have to a certain degree, but specifically people who have been through narcissistic abuse, psychopathic abuse, childhood abuse, neglect, and so on and so forth, and who identify themselves as perfectionists, people pleasers, people who always want to do good, who want to be liked, who have very high conscience and empathy. These people will tend to have this conflict even stronger in a specific way. I'm going to talk about what way, and I'm going to give you a remedy for it. Now, this remedy isn't, of course, a substitute for therapy, isn't substitute for, process of self-discovery, which can take many years, and, understanding yourself deeply. But this can be helpful. It's been really helpful to me. It's really simple, although it does take a bit of work in the beginning, but eventually can become a bit automatic. So first I want to explain something. I'm going to be using that Freudian model for this because I think he was really onto something. He was amazing. The more I learn about Freud, the more I just go like, wow, he's incredible. So his model of the three people that we all have inside of our minds, and that is the id, the ego, and the superego. Yeah? So the id is like a child. It is the part of us that's very instinctual, wild, prone to reactions, highly emotional. Then we have the ego, which is like the adult in the room. I'm going to talk about the ego in a moment more, but I want to first tell you about the parent, the kind of polar opposite of the child, which is the conscience. It is the morality aspect of ourselves. The preacher, also I can look at it that way, the voice that tells us what to do, what we should be, the should'er. It's the should'er. It's basically, the source that ignites deep feeling of responsibility, conscience, and perfectionism, especially in the child. So these two are incredibly strong aspects in the person who's been abused. Now, what's missing, it's kind of there, but it's very little, is the ego, actually. And I get so flustered by this whole big propaganda on the internet and beyond, that the ego is the enemy, that ego is bad. Of course, out of control, arrogant, maniacal ego unleashed is very dangerous. Totally yes. But it depends who you are. A narcissist needs less ego and a little bit more supervision by the superego, right? But of course they refuse that, so they're very imbalanced in that way. They're more like, it's funny, like it would kind of look like this, small of this and a lot of this. Sorry for that. I couldn't resist. But in the case of us, right, people who have been prone to abuse and have a sense of kind of feeling weak, low self-esteem, lack of personal agency, lack of just feeling adequate, deep sense of inadequacy, we need a stronger ego. This may sound totally, I don't know, this may sound like totally something opposite that you've been hearing, but I want you to hear me out because this is super important. Especially people who have been subjected to the New Age thinking, and I don't want to bash New Age all the way because there's some great things about it, but in some ways, if you really succumb to this ideology that ego is bad, it can hurt you. It can hurt you really badly, because most people who are attracted to these forms of religion and spirituality in general are good people who want to be even better, who want to be gooder. It's like we can never be good enough, right? We can never be good enough. So you have to be really careful with that, because you may come to believing that your ego is bad, that everything that happens to you is the result of a bad ego that you have, and you shouldn't be, you shouldn't be feeling what you're feeling. I've even heard that, like, you shouldn't be feeling, you shouldn't be suffering so much. Oh my God, like, get over it already, because it's your ego. It's your ego is holding you down. You know, your ego is keeping you in this trap. No, it's not true. It's actually the out of control, raging id and the superego that is beating up the id. So the parent keeps lashing the child and punishing the child. That's the source of our conflict inside. So we never feel good enough, because the moment we identify with the child, right, we're always gonna feel not good enough. And then there's this rage that the child feels, right? The anger that's unexpressed that can lead to chronic pain, and the inability to rebel, because then there is the parent that's sitting on top of it, the conscience, the superego that's not allowing it. It's keeping the lid on. It's the shame, right? So the anger is inside the jar, stuffed in, and the shame is the lid. And so we walk around like this, you know, and feeling almost nauseous from all of these emotions that haven't been expressed while the conflict rages in the mind. So what's the solution? The solution is to build a stronger ego. Ding ding! Probably didn't expect that. Actually, you do need a stronger ego, and it's actually kind of a fun thing to do, because it's about building identity. It's about exploring your interests. It's about learning to stand up for yourself. It's about being assertive. It's about learning to say no and feel good about it, right? It's gonna bring you to really cool places. But stop, for the love of God, stop believing that ego is bad. Again, unless you're an arrogant, maniacal narcissist, you need an ego. Okay, now I want to just put a little asterisk here and tell you about where I think the whole idea of not so much that ego is bad, but that it's important to be able to release the ego and not too much identify with it, to have a spiritual experience of liberation. And that's completely true. Spot on, because ego is also a construct. It's a construct of the mind, but it's an important construct. It's the mediator. It's the adult in the room between the child and the parent, the internalized child and the parent. Actually, the parent is internalized. The child has just always been there, right? It's the one that still needs things that it wasn't given in childhood. It's the one that still bleeds. It's the wounded child, right? There's also wonder child, which you'll get access to the stronger ego you have. Because now the ego and the id can become friends and kind of can take your wonder child for a walk and be marveling at this amazing world that we live in, right? So that's a bit of a shift in paradigm right there, right? But the parent needs to be also controlled. And the only person that can control the parent, it's not the inner child, it's the adult, it's the ego. So sorry, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. So back to the spiritual thing, right? I want to explain it. It's going to be a very short explanation, but hopefully I can get my point across, because this is a vast subject. But basically, if you want to have a deep spiritual experience, which is basically merging with the all, with pure consciousness, you need to be able to let go of the ego. But that doesn't mean killing it, like they say, kill your ego, or bash it, or like cut off its head, or any of that stuff. No, it's still there, like let it sit there. But instead of identifying with all the things that you are as a human being, and your identity as you know, whatever your name is, with all of your history, all of your aspirations, like it's a big container, right? Instead of identifying as that, you just focus on the breath. And you merge with everything, right? It's something that we experience in meditation. So in that moment, we let go of the ego. But then when we open our eyes and it's time to get back into life, we step right back in and we're back to being ourselves. And it's not a big deal. I don't understand this huge hate towards the ego. It's really not okay. I think it's probably because of all the maniacal leaders who are, you know, running this planet and doing horrible things to it. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's where it gets its bad rap. But I don't want you to think that ego is bad, especially, again, if you identify yourself as someone who has issues with identity, who has issues with strong agency, and, you know, who feels kind of like, you know, like people just walk all over you. You need a stronger ego. Okay, so now how to have a stronger ego, that's another topic. But today I want to give you this little exercise that's going to help quell that conflict in your mind, and also stop fueling this rage, this anger that's just sort of dripping into this container, and give you some relief. So basically, when you're going around your business, when you're walking around your house or doing something, start to observe your thoughts. And you may hear that there's a conversation going on all the time. Now, who's having the conversation? It's not just one person talking, notice. It's many people talking, right? We have many voices, we have many parts. So, and the parts can fall into these three buckets. These are models, but they work really well. So one model is the child. So let's say you're struggling with loneliness, okay? You've just left an abusive relationship and you feel kind of isolated, but at the same time you would love to connect with people, but you don't know quite how to do it, and you're just kind of sitting in it. And here it goes, right? Here's the conversation. So the child is going, oh, I hate this. This feels horrible. I want a lover. I want a partner. It's probably the one that's going to make you actually pick up your phone and send a text to your abusive ex, right? It's very emotional. It's very unwieldy. It's wild. You know, it's changing all the time. It's shifting. It can go from crying to laughing in an instant. That's the child. That's the inner ego. That's the inner child. That's the inner id that needs to be tamed by the ego. It's going to take a while before they all come into balance, because the child needs to be heard. So I'm going to leave the child here for a second. Let's look at the parent. And does the parent go? And the parent goes, well, you know, you are 40 or 50 or whatever years old, and you're still by yourself. You're still alone. Look at you. It's the inner critic, right? Look at you. Look at you. You're home alone. You have a terrible job. You're all by yourself. Look at where you ended up. Shame on you, right? So the rage of the child is building up. The parent is keeping the lid locked on that jar, and we're walking around feeling sick, exhausted, hopeless, helpless, stuck. This is going to create a stuck dynamic. That's your primary double bind right here, the child and the parent. And now where's the ego? Where's the adult in the room? Usually not there, especially because your identity has been just shattered into pieces, right? So what I want you to do, if this is something you identify with, is label your thoughts. This is going to give you a little objectivity and allow the ego to step in, the mediator to step in, and listen to both sides and say, okay, I hear this voice, I hear these emotions, that's my child. And then you go, oh, this is the parent, this is the conscious, this is super ego. And you start to mediate between the two, start to ask questions. And I always talk about critical thinking, how important critical thinking is, because besides labeling, you can either do sub-labeling, right? Look at the child and the emotions that it's conjuring up and label those. I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling afraid, I'm feeling guilty, I'm feeling ashamed, like feeling all those things. Labeling is key. Language is so powerful. And the same with the parent, right? We label what the parent's doing, and then we start to ask questions. Say, like the parent says, well, you're 45 and you're still single, you're worthless. And say, said who? Said who that being single at 45 is worthless? Said who? What if the opposite is true? What if I am actually expressing my self-worth by choosing not to be with an abuser and giving myself a new chance in life? What do you say about that? That's the ego. See, that's the ego having a conversation with the parent. And then when the id is freaking out, you come to the child and you embrace her or him. And you spend some time feeling the emotions. You don't even need to say much. That's the thing with children, right? They don't need the talk. They just need the hug. So bring the child in, give him a hug, sit with it, and then do something that makes you happy. Or if it's too much, distract yourself for a moment with a comedy, with a movie. Call up a friend. Plan something for the next day. Cook yourself a nice dinner. Maybe invite someone over for a glass of wine, right? We often sit and brood. This was me. Sit and brood that we're alone, no one's inviting us, without realizing that your friend, my friend, was feeling the same across the street. All I needed to do was pick up the phone and invite her over. So you never know. There may be people out there, or join a forum, or go to an event around an interest that you have, or go to take some dance lessons and meet some people there. So anyway, there's many things you can do. But I just want to acknowledge that this period of time when you're healing, when you're feeling isolated, I picked loneliness as an example, but it is tough and it is tricky and it's difficult, and it's good to have somebody there with you to help you through it. Again, whether it's a coach, I'm available, I can help you with it, or if it's a therapist, a good therapist can, oh my God, help so much, or it's a friend, or whoever. But that's the essence of it. So I'm not going to drag this on for too long, although I'm very, 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 very fascinated by this topic, and I think that this exercise is really promising, and I just wanted to really convey to you this whole concept of ego and how you shouldn't be afraid of it, how much you need it, and you'll notice that once the three begins to balance out, how nice it will be in your head, how things will be clear, and you'll know what you want. You'll be able to make better decisions. You'll have a stronger sense of agency, and you'll just feel healthier overall. And you won't be drip feeding the anger, right? Because your child would have been already heard. Your parent is out there chilling, reading a paper, and you're the one in control. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments. I'm super curious, because this is kind of new information. I haven't seen anybody talk about this. Actually, that's a lie. I have read some of these parts in a book. And also there's a great coach called Alan Robarge here online on YouTube, who has some videos about it. And I heard him last year when I was going through something where I was saved by my ego. So that's my gift for you. Again, let me know what you think, and I'm sending you big hugs and lots of love from dark evening in the UK. Okay, bye. Cheers.